We're going to take a quick second to talk about the difference between steeper and less steep slopes. Now, this is a very visual concept, so you will be using Desmos a lot to determine if something is steeper or less steep. Let's review for a second. Remember that slope, or the M, represents the steepness of a line, or like the incline of the line. So we can compare the incline of two lines to decide which one's steeper or which one's less steep. When we're looking at the slope number itself, the M, the bigger the slope number is, like 5 versus 3, the steeper the line. The smaller the slope, so like 1/3 and 1/2, 1/3 is smaller, the less steep the line is going to be. So you can look at the slopes to determine if it's going to be steeper or less steep. But another idea that you can use is to talk about the graphs. Slopes is a very visual concept. If I was talking about a line that's steeper, okay, a steeper line, what I might do is have a line that is harder to walk up. If we were trying to walk up like little people, this hill versus the blue hill, we would say that the blue hill is steeper. It would be harder to walk up. But an example of something that is less steep might be something like this blue line. If we were trying to walk across this blue line, it would be less steep than the red line. Steeper and less steep. This also works if we're talking about negative slopes. So if we look down at these negative slopes, and we want to create a line that is steeper than this negative slope, again, we just have to make it as if it would be harder to walk across. If we were walking down this slope, we would say it'd be easier to walk down that slope than down that slope. So the blue line is steeper than the red line. And to create a slope that is less steep than the red line on this graph, we would just make it so where it is less steep. It would be easier to walk down this blue line than this red line, which makes it less steep. So one of the questions you might be asked is to determine which line is less steep or which line is steeper, like these questions down here. We can probably tell these answers by the slopes themselves. Remember, the bigger the slope, the steeper the line. So between y equals 3x plus 2 and y equals 13x plus 8, 13 is a bigger slope. That means we think that this is going to be the steeper line. With fractions, things that have the bigger bottoms are going to be smaller. So in fact, y equals 1/5 x is a smaller number, which means 1/2 x minus 5 is going to be steeper. The slopes of the third set here are -5 and -1. So -5 and -1, we're actually just going to be paying attention to the number, not the sign here, to determine if something's steeper or less steep. The negative direction just means that it's going to be headed downwards. You would agree, though, that 5 is bigger than 1. So we would say that -5x minus 10 is going to be a steeper line. The last one has the slopes of 4 and 1/4. Pretty obviously, 4 is bigger than 1/4, which means that 4x minus 6 is going to be the steeper line. But let's say we just weren't really sure about which one was going to be steeper and which one is going to be less steep. Again, this is a very visual concept. So if we were to take all of these equations and graph them like you see on your screen, and then we started checking, let's say the first two, we would agree that this blue line is steeper, which is what we got when we did it by the slopes. Between 1/2 x and 1/5 x, 1/2 x looks steeper. We told this just by the slopes. Comparing -5x minus 10 and -x minus 3, you'd agree that -5x is a steeper line. And the last ones, we got 4x and 1/4 x. Obviously, 4x is steeper. Steeper and less steep lines. It's a very visual concept.